Welcome back.
We are back for another sad week of Narrow Squeak.
I'm Crystal.
And I'm Sheena.
And yeah, like she said, it's Narrow Squeak.
Yeah.
We are recording this one at the same time as the sad story of Phil Hartman. So we are sitting down low in the lows after talking about his sad death.
We definitely are. So if you're noticing an energy shift in the last 2 weeks, I guess, of podcasting, it's just for some reason we talk about all sorts of things that are very sad, but for some reason these ones seem to be hitting a little harder. And
who would have thought that the topic we chose to podcast on was super depressing?
I know. I had no idea. I feel like I was duped.
Oh my god.
Oh boy. So, I think you mentioned that you watched the Britney Spears documentary.
Did.
Everyone is talking about it. I have not had the time, but I'll hear from you and see if it's worth my time. So, give us an update.
I don't know if it is. I mean, the conservatorship should end. If she has a healthy alternative, the conservatorship should end. And it's very much focused on the conservatorship and the relationship between her and her dad. And it explains away a lot of that crazed Britney that everyone thought there was. And it really wasn't. She was just dealing with the hardest part of her life, and they wouldn't leave her alone.
I cannot even imagine being that type of famous. No. I do not want that. Like, people in your business 24/7 in your hardest days of your life, like, in your face, like, no, thank you.
Yeah, so it goes over that. Like, it explains when she shaved her head. It explains away when she beat the shit out of the cameraman's car. Like, it really does.
Done the same.
And it's actually the cameraman in that story is saying, this is why she did this to my car. This is, like, he cared about her. It wasn't that he didn't care about her, but the paparazzi, for some reason, they have a different mentality.
Okay, I think you have to be that, like, in people's faces in their business.
Like, I couldn't do that.
You have to, like, not have any regard for other people.
But he
to some degree.
He did have a regard. Like, he did care about her. I genuinely think he cared about her, but not enough to not do it.
Yeah.
Because the reality was her picture was worth millions.
Well, yeah. Money talks, right?
Exactly. So he's taking these pictures, and he was saying, like, I won't ruin for you what was happening, but there was something happening in the background, and when they came at her that day, it just was the wrong time. And I've been there where someone's approached me at the wrong time when I'm having a bad day, and it just blows out of proportion for me, right? Yeah. I've never beat up a paparazzi's car because I've never.
Well, I mean, I've never had the paparazzi after me.
No.
If I did, I might beat their car up.
Maybe.
Or I might be flattered at first, but then the novelty would wear off pretty quickly.
Yeah. Same with her shaving her head and stuff. Like, she asked the hairstylist to do it, and the hairstylist said, "Are you sure? Like, I don't want to cut your hair off because you're Britney." And she said, "Yes, I do." And she just basically said, "See, here, I'll start. Like, just do it." So she definitely went through a lot of mental health stuff, but it's a little bit on the same, like, not the same lines, but you were talking last episode about just this image of women and how people interact with women and stuff, and her as a Hollywood persona, like the person that they, right from day one.
She was sexualized as a child.
Right from day one, exactly. On Star Search. Well, even before that, when she started on Star Search, the question they asked her was something about, something about being her boyfriend or something. Like, the host, a 50-year-old, 60-year-old man, and they're like, that's where the problem started. She never had a chance to be a kid. She never had a chance to be a teenager. So that does something to a person.
Oh, it does.
Very much so.
People lose their shit. Well, like, it's too much at once for children to be dealing with that, right?
Well, and you look at it, not all of them, because some of them did come out of it relatively unscathed, or maybe they didn't have it as much in the spotlight. But you look at Lindsay Lohan, you look at Amanda Bynes.
Oh, I know.
Like, there's some significant mental health that you can't say is just genetic. There's a major impact on the paparazzi and stardom that had on them as humans in their childhood.
Oh, definitely. And then, you know, your managers and your parents, or your parents are your managers, and they're forcing you and forcing you and forcing you. You're going and you don't, you can't have any of your old friends really because everyone just wants to be around you for your fame, and
exactly,
it just like that really takes away something from someone.
And they do reference that too, right? So like the relationship she was in and out of, basically people were saying she was just starving for real friends.
Yeah, she
just wanted real friends, and she was surrounded by people who were using her, and so it was really it's a sad story, and they need to give credit where it's due, and they need to recognize the harm that they've done to her, because even in the case, so this paparazzi who is in this video and he's talking about it, and on the one hand he's saying we cared about her, we loved her, we wanted to make sure she was okay, but then he also justified his actions. It's like, then you don't get it.
No, you don't.
You don't get the impact you had in that moment, because if you did, you would have left, and you would have left her alone. And then he says, well, usually it was that she just wanted us to go away that day. Like, we didn't know. She always liked us around. No, she was nice to you because she didn't have a choice but to have you around.
Yeah.
That was the truth of it.
Oh, God, can you imagine?
So it is a bit infuriating at times to watch. It wasn't a bad documentary. I didn't mind it. There wasn't, like, there's no comment on it from Brittany or her family.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't see anything from that.
Really
it's
just
very
a whole
much
other perspective of not even their perspective.
It is and it isn't. Like, they draw a lot from her social media. And just like the history of her life and stuff.
Yeah.
And they give you some snippets of what she was like behind the scenes and stuff, which was really nice to see. Yeah, it didn't have any. There was no verification of everything from her or her family or anybody on her team.
Mm.
So, yeah. So it was okay. Like, it was good, but I would have liked it better had it been actually her.
Yeah, well,
so,
definitely.
Yeah, so I did that. And there was one other thing that we should talk about.
What's that?
So this week, Sheena and I have figured out that there are topics that Sheena and I can't talk about.
There is. It doesn't work.
It does not work. So, Sheena, I was watching Criminal Minds, and like we've said a couple times, Criminal Minds bases a lot of their episodes on cases. Well, the episode I was watching, it was like season 5, and it was based on Waco, and they actually mention Waco and say, like, we can't have another Waco, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So then Sheena says, we have different perspectives on Waco. And without us getting into the conversation of what we dispute about, because it's not going to be good, let's just say she has one perspective, I have a different perspective on it, and so we're just not going to talk about Waco. But we should talk about cults at some point.
Yes, we just have to pick them carefully.
I think that one in particular is probably... It's probably going to be the only one like that.
That does have a lot of controversy
around
it, obviously.
There is. And there's a lot I recognize that went horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
We won't go down that road. It was basically like, so I guess we'll just agree to disagree because this conversation's a little spicy. And I like you, so let's not ruin this.
But hey, we can do that, right? We can recognize our limits, we can play within them, and we can move on.
Thank you, OLG.
Yes. So we've realized that we will not be discussing Waco, so if you are waiting for the Waco episode, it won't
happen.
Come.
No, but we will discuss cults.
Yes, because there's some really good stories about cults. Yeah, that are fun to talk about because they're so crazy. I really do actually think we should do a cult episode.
I'm so down.
Yeah.
I told you I saw that meme. It was like the girl, she's like, I kind of want to join a cult just to see if I could get out of it. That's probably not the best idea.
She's saying it's a meme, but that was a text Sheena sent.
Well, it's like to push boundaries. Okay.
So yeah, that was it. That's all I had. Okay, story time, Sheena.
All right, it is story time. So I'm like nervous. I don't know why. So I kind of did touch on this last episode, saying I know in a sense that this isn't a technical crime of passion from being heat in the moment, but I believe the passion, amongst other things, blurred the lines of crime, love, suicide, and manslaughter. So I figured it would make the cut. So
I know which one you're doing.
I am going to talk about Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy.
This is such a sad story.
It is that I was actually texting Crystal earlier because as I was going through it, it struck a couple chords with me, and I was like literally crying looking at my notes, and I was like, I'm gonna get all my tears out now so I'm not crying on the podcast. It still might happen. So we are not made of steel, and we don't think murder is funny.
No.
For anyone who's listened to some of the other episodes, it does affect us, and there is a huge trigger warning, which I feel like I always have to do for my episodes. But there's a huge trigger warning on this episode if suicide is something that has affected you personally, or whatever. So this might not be the episode for you. Otherwise, for everyone else that's still here, I will get into it. As you know, this is a tragic story that ultimately caused the death of a young Conrad and severely impacted the life of Michelle. So Michelle Carter was born into a good family on August 11th, 1996. Pretty much ever since she was little, Michelle struggled with mental health issues. When she was 11, she had developed an eating disorder, and by the age of 14, she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, weighing 86 pounds and having chronic liver disease.
Oh.
And by 15, she was on Prozac. So this is where the medication piece comes in.
Good old Prozac.
So she was on Prozac, and so that accompanied by suicidal ideation, self-harm, and a continuation of her eating disorder. Conrad, he was born September 12th, 1995. He also struggled with mental health issues. He struggled with social anxiety from a young age, and when his parents divorced in 2011, he started his dark battle with full-blown depression, racing thoughts as well as thoughts of self-harm. Conrad and Michelle met really by fluke. They were both visiting family in Naples, Florida in 2012. They would come to learn that they only lived an hour apart in Massachusetts? I cannot say that word for the life of me.
Massachusetts?
That's the
still
last
not it.
I cannot say it. I don't know why or what it is. Anyways, so we'll just... moving on. So they lived an hour apart in American city. Countries. No, not countries. Stop talking, Sheena.
Please don't. Otherwise it's going to be a short episode.
While in Florida, they spent a lot of time together, going to the beach, going for walks, and then they kind of decided maybe they should date. So they would go on to have an on-again, off-again relationship for the next 2.5 years. Primarily, their relationship was online. They only actually met in person 2 to 3 times.
Okay.
While things fizzled out a bit, Michelle had met a girl on her softball team, and their friendship blossomed into what Michelle perceived to be a romantic one. The girl, Alice, her mother was extremely uncomfortable with their friendship since day one, had a bad feeling about Michelle. I don't know if it was because she thought that they were dating or if there was more to that.
Right.
But she kind of went through several tactics to split them up. She eventually forbade Alice from seeing Michelle, and at this point, Alice finally listened to her mother, leaving Michelle with feelings of abandonment and furthering her dark perception of herself.
I remember being a teenager, and there was kids that my mom was like,
nope.
No.
Yeah.
So there's a spidey sense sometimes, right?
My mom was the kid that I should have stayed away from, so that's different. So there was no spidey sense there. But parents do have an instinct of like, there's something off here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, exactly. My mom had really bad judgment in a lot of things. But for some reason, she was pretty good at that.
Yeah. So you can recall her maybe telling you similar things like, stop talking to this person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Both Conrad and Michelle were battling their depression, and in October 2012, Conrad took 2 bottles of Tylenol and a bottle of NyQuil. So he took those at home, and then immediately after called his friend, forgot her name, but called his friend and said, I've made a mistake, you need to call my mom and get my mom here. So he was taken to the hospital and then started being treated for his depression at that point. So they had still kind of weren't talking at this point. So that happened in October, and then December 2012, Conrad reached out to Michelle. I'm even looking at it. The hell? Michelle, asking if she cared what happened to him, and she goes, oh, I don't, like, what do you mean? What happened to you? That's when Conrad and Michelle first started to confess their deepest, darkest thoughts when he confessed his suicide attempt to her. In the fall of 2012, the intensity of their relationship amplified. They would share ways of committing suicide. So they would talk about, you could hang yourself or you could drown. But then she would also tell him, I need you to stay alive and I need you on this earth. But then they started to kind of romanticize death.
Right.
Which is really scary to think. Like, there's these two teenagers, which being an adolescent is fucking hard.
Yeah.
And then you both have mental health issues, and you're both sharing this darkness with each other, and it's very toxic.
Yeah.
And then to sort of romanticize death and not really grasping probably what it actually, like, what it means. Like, knowing what it means, but not to the full extent, you know?
Yeah.
Conrad would often play with her mind, too. He would call her fat, knowing her history of eating disorders, pressuring her to have sex when she wasn't ready. And then he would talk down to her when she would state that. And then he'd kind of pull away for a few days at a time, sort of like playing with her mind a little bit.
Teenage boys,
right? So then the relationship fizzled out a bit again. But around this time, Conrad started working towards his future. He did well in school. He got a scholarship because his grades were so good to go to a community college. And he got his captain's license because his family owned a marine business.
Oh, cool.
So he was 18 and had his captain's license, which I've never looked into how hard that is to get, but I'm sure it's not super easy.
Yeah, it depends on... it's
I have
not.
no idea.
It's not super easy, and it depends on what you're trying to
I think they had like tugboats and stuff, so I don't know.
Different sizes of boats require different licensing.
Yeah.
And that is all courtesy of Below Deck. Thank you very much.
Call us out on your show now. But his depression started to creep back into his life because his family didn't really, I don't know, I can't say they weren't supportive, but maybe they thought he was doing okay because I don't think he alluded really to everyone around him the severity of things. So you don't know how to help if you don't know what's going on, right?
Right.
So the depression creeped back into his life. And then at this time, Michelle had been taken off Prozac and put on Celexa.
So changing of medications, which is never good.
Which is huge. And not to mention...
If medications aren't working, changing them is a good thing, but changing them properly and effectively and...
with proper counseling.
Yes.
And not putting young kids on medication right away and working through other things.
Exactly.
is very important because once you've been on them at 11... Your changes
your chemistry is
Yeah,
changed.
so it's super scary. So, and then her eating disorder started to make an appearance again. Not that it went away, but she started to actively kind of, she started binging and things like that, and then working out like vigorously afterwards. So, instead of just not eating, she kind of changed her approach. And it was at this tender time in both their lives that they regained contact. Conrad reached out to Michelle and told her that he was depressed. Michelle's friends, because she was kind of doing good, they warned her against rekindling this flame, but they started right back where they left off, discussing their mental health and the darkness that they both felt. He was confiding solely in her about his social anxiety and his depression. She would send him links for support and would often encourage him to go into a facility and get help. And he refused and said, my medications are fine. Like, I don't need to be going into a facility. So June 9th, 2014, at this point, Michelle had been checked into a mental health facility again to help her with her eating disorder. While she was there, I don't know how this was happening, but I guess you get phone calls and stuff, but they communicated daily. While she's in getting her therapy and her help, she's still taking on all of Conrad's mental health stuff and being his full support. So they're communicating daily, and they had made tentative plans to hang out when she was released. But when she was being released, she had already made other plans, and this upset Conrad. And he was like, you don't have time for me, blah, 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 feeling probably abandoned himself.
Yep.
So he started to say, but then kind of got over it, and they're chatting again. And this is where the romanticizing kind of really comes in, because he started to say, like, we should be like Romeo and Juliet. And Michelle's like, I would love to be your Juliet. And he's like, but do you remember what happens at the end of that story? And then she's like, oh no, like, we shouldn't be like that. Like, but then, so at this point, Conrad's actively looking for ways to commit suicide. He's online searching for poisonous seeds. And then Michelle kind of goes, well, maybe you should use bleach instead. She started to believe that maybe reverse psychology would work, since nothing else was. And he continued to express his suicidal ideation, but was hesitant. He kept coming back to the fact that he didn't want to leave his family, he didn't want to hurt his family, his sisters he loved. He asked Michelle, like, how would you feel if your sister committed suicide? And she goes, I would be hurt, but I would get over it eventually. So things like that are kind of, there's a whole video of all of their texts and everything. I've seen it. Yeah, like I started watching it, so all of this isn't complete verbatim, because I never would have gotten this written if I had just continued. So, but it does exist and it is out there. So, and then Conrad kind of goes, well, I have a plan. I'm going to go into the woods with a plastic bag and I'm going to tape it around my head. And Michelle's response was, oh, your last social media post will be about me. That's great. Social media is everything.
Yeah.
He texted her the next day that he was still alive, and she was almost angry about this. And like, you're a liar. You're not actually going to follow through with this. You made me feel stupid. She was upset by this.
Right.
So, but they continued to devise a plan for a suicide. July 9th, 2014, Conrad steals a small portable generator from work with the plan of carbon monoxide poisoning. He attempted that evening around 11 p.m., but the generator stopped working. So then he tells Michelle that it stopped working, but then he actively looks on how to fix it. So, but then he starts having second thoughts again. Michelle assured him that she would be there for his family and he had nothing to worry about. She would console them and she would support them through this difficult time that they would be having. July 12th, he went to the beach with his family. They had a great day. His mom thought that he was doing better. And this often happens when people have come to the conclusion that they are going to commit suicide because it's that sense of relief that they have. Yeah. So there's this surge where everyone's like, oh my God, they're doing well and they're happy and they're, so that gets mistaken for what it is. Michelle and Conrad decide that committing his suicide in the daylight would make things like a little less suspicious. So this is where I cried. Oh. So he leaves home and his mom asks if he'll be home for dinner. And Conrad replies, I don't think so. And that was the last... Okay, hold on. Fudge. That was the last time she had a conversation with her son. Conrad then drives to a Kmart and parks in an empty lot. As the truck starts to fill, he calls Michelle and they chatted for 43 minutes. The call was dropped and they chatted again at 7:12 for another 47 minutes. At 8 p.m., Conrad gets out of the truck and he's saying, he gets out and he's like, I'm not sure about this. I don't know if I can go through with this. And at this point, Michelle says, get back in the truck. This is what you wanted. I will be there for your family. Just get back in that truck. So Conrad gets back in the truck and she almost immediately begins texting her friends saying she hasn't heard from Conrad. She's worried about him. She's concerned because he hasn't been doing well.
So she's looking for the attention.
Yeah. Texts his sister, do you know where your brother is? I can't get a hold of him. And her sister goes, well, he's probably at our dad's. Anyways, and then she texts Conrad and goes, you didn't go through with it. I know it. Maybe now you'll get some help. July 13, 2014, Conrad's parents file a missing persons report. And his truck is found in the Kmart parking lot. His father is called and he sees the truck and the police tape and his heart sinks immediately. Conrad is pronounced dead on the scene. July 19th, the funeral is held for Conrad. Michelle attends, even though it's just supposed to be family. She continues to text his phone, which in the documentary they say is weird, but I can kind of get that because it's I get that, how somebody would want to do that, and it could be therapeutic for people. Yeah. I know people that have left voicemails for people and write them Facebook messages, so people handle grief in a weird way. I mean, now they have the whole picture, so maybe that's how they say it's weird, but anyways, that fall, in September, one day after what would have been his 19th birthday, Michelle had organized a tournament called Homers for Conrad to raise money for mental health awareness. I think they raised $2,300. The weird thing is she did it in her town, not his, where his friends and family are. Yeah. So one of his friends was like, what the hell? Why are you doing it in your town? And she's like, well, it would be too hard to organize in yours. But really it should have been in his hometown, right? Yeah. So again, that's kind of where she's getting all this attention and gratification, and people are like, you're so amazing, it's great that you've taken this tragedy and you're doing so much with it, you're such an advocate. She's saying that she's helping, these people have reached out on Facebook and she's helping them and just kind of soaking it all in. And her friends in court and stuff kind of allude to the fact that she was really needy and really needed attention and just now really didn't know where she fit. Yeah. So this kind of fed into that. October 2nd, 2014, everything takes a really long time. Police had looked through the phone and he had deleted every other messages except for their thread. So they look at that and they're kind of like, we think we have something incriminating here. So they go to her school with a search warrant and they take her phone and you can hear her. Her only thing is, well, will I get it back? And they're like, well, when we're done with it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. My phone's really expensive.
I know.
I would kind of want it back.
Yeah. Can I have it back? So, and by February 4th, 2014, Michelle is arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter and will be tried as a youthful offender, which means anyone from the ages of 14 to 17 can fall into that category, but they can still do this tried as an adult, like do the same amount of time as an adult that's tried for that crime. So she could be looking up to 20 years.
Wow.
Michelle was released the next day on a $2,500 cash bail. This caused an uproar in the legal community, as it is not something that had been seen before, and usually with this charge is accompanied by a physical assault or a physical attack of some degree, and in this case it was just speech. So First Amendment rights people got their everything in a bunch. They were outraged, saying this impeded on her rights. The word is
panties.
Yes.
They're panties. They got
panties.
Their panties. Yeah. I hate that word.
I know. I was like, so they were like, oh, you're like her freedom of speech and blah, 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 blah. Michelle waives her right to a jury trial. I think her lawyer, well, they kind of said this, I don't know if it's in the documentary or something else, but her lawyer probably thought that she had a better shot of just the judge looking at the incriminating facts rather than taking all of the emotional stuff into consideration.
I think her lawyer probably advised her well.
Yeah, definitely, because it could have gone much worse.
Yeah.
Amanda Knox actually spoke out supporting Michelle, being all too familiar with how the media can create a narrative about individuals.
Okay, this is like Scott Peterson.
I know.
And what was her?
What is it? Oh, we just talked about this.
Oh my god,
too.
we just talked about the fact that she was doing this. This is the same thing.
Like,
this is like the blind leading the blind. You don't.
Exactly. So Amanda Knox wrote this huge thing.
Just shut up.
So
not you. Sheena,
no, I know. I was like, fine. Figure out the rest of the story then. In her defense, so her defense team did bring up her history with mental health, her recent med change, which in all actuality could have affected her frontal lobe and decision making. Decision making, Massachusetts. I have to giggle a little, guys, because I'm getting sad.
Oh.
By July 16, 2017, the Commonwealth found Michelle to be guilty of involuntary manslaughter, stating that it wasn't her string of text messages as to why they can indict her, but her reckless conduct of telling him to get back in the truck and not calling for help as she knew exactly what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't her text messages, it was that pinnacle moment where she fucked up.
It was more her text to other people.
And then August 3rd, 2017, Michelle's back in court for her sentencing. She gets sentenced to 2.5 years, but will only be expected to serve 15 months. Now, immediately they appeal this decision, and so at that time, Michelle's still allowed to remain at home. She's not incarcerated while the appeal is going through. But the appeal was ultimately denied, and February 11, 2019, so this is 2 years after her court date for that, and this is 5 years after the suicide. Courts don't move very quickly, do they?
No, they do not.
So Michelle was allowed to remain at home. So February 11, 2019, the now 22-year-old Michelle Carter is taken into custody to serve her sentence at the Bristol County Correctional Facility. Side note, Aaron Hernandez was actually incarcerated there as well. In July 2019, the HBO 2-part documentary, I Love You Now Die, which I did watch, was released. Also in July 2019, they passed a bill called Conrad's Law. So to state that anyone who is found to have coerced someone into suicide could actually face 5 years in prison. While in jail, Michelle worked in the kitchen, did some educational activities, and joined a book club. Due to her good behavior, she was released 3 months early. And Thursday, January 23rd, 2020, Michelle is released right into the almost pandemic. I blame her.
I'm not going to lie. Michelle, you got a bit of karma there.
Well,
Thanks for that.
Right. So this is where I had mentioned that there's kind of a little bit of overlap with the TV show thing.
Right.
So in the documentary, they highlight that Michelle was obsessed with Glee.
Oh, okay.
So there was one character in there specifically, couldn't tell you who it was because I didn't write it down, but it was a female character, and so she would often quote what that character said in the show to her boyfriend. She'd quote those things to Conrad.
Okay. And
then also in the movie, one of the actors does commit suicide, and they do have a whole episode supporting him in the show. Did he commit suicide? One of them died.
No.
It wasn't suicide?
So yes, one of them does commit suicide. They do not honor him because he committed suicide because he was caught with child porn.
Oh.
So they did not honor him,
Okay.
but Corey Monteith died,
Oh, okay.
and he died of a drug overdose.
Okay.
It was around the same time as Heath Ledger, or just shortly after.
Okay.
But it was a pneumonia thing. But I think he was genuinely sick and over medicated as well. But he also had a drug addiction. So there's a lot of. But yes, they honored Monteith.
They kind of seem to think that maybe she had a disconnect from reality.
Mm-hmm.
At some point in there, and was really trying to like make her life this movie. Something like that, but it's really hard to say. So anyways, that is the Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy very, very sad story. I was going to look to see where Michelle is today, but I didn't get around to it.
Right.
So it's a very touchy story, kind of controversial.
Yeah.
People have very different opinions as to what may have happened. His family was very upset.
Right.
And his aunt, I think in the documentary, kind of says when they found out that Michelle had done this, it was almost like hearing about his death over again.
Right.
And so they were pretty traumatized by this.
Of
rightfully
course.
so.
Yeah.
And she had really been like supporting the family and been beside them, and they kind of just really felt betrayed and like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? So Michelle obviously didn't have a good a good handle on her mental health.
No.
And the medication change, and there's this crazy tornado of factors that really like led to all this. But
so I have two opinions. So one is that yes, she was definitely mentally unwell, 100%. Do I think she should still be held responsible for her actions in it? Yeah. Yeah,
she was totally bewildered, like that she was even being like and it almost looked like she didn't actually understand how she was getting in trouble for this, because I think in her mindset she was like, this is what he wanted. And I'm all like, so there's a couple things, right? Like the attention, obviously, like she was feeding off that with doing all of these things and taking all the credit for things, but then also like having to be his sounding board for everything all the time, and just like realizing that that's what he wanted to do. And I think he had 4 attempts before this.
Wow.
Too. So I don't know. It's tragic. Like it didn't. The whole thing's very tragic.
I don't know if you can hold her responsible. Same as the drug thing. You can't hold her responsible for the actual actions. She did not do it for him. Mm-hmm. But you can hold her responsible for her role.
Well, in that moment of like him getting back in the truck, and you maybe realizing like this is real this time, and not calling for help, like.
And she knew. She can't say she didn't know that it was real, because she was actually
a part of that for 2 hours almost.
Well, like, and interacting with other people to get
attention, to get it going
from it, to start the search for it, to start the drama. It's like she thrived on the drama of it.
Yeah, and there's like a neuro like that happens. People, and like they get addicted to drama in the same way that they do like opiates and stuff, right? So they need to keep heightening it, and
it's very dangerous, right? Because that's dangerous. Like, okay, if she hadn't been caught for this, would she have preyed upon another person?
Exactly.
In the
like
same
what
way.
would have happened? Because this is going to die down soon, right? Like people aren't going to be like, oh, like your boyfriend. Like eventually that goes away.
It's almost like a thrill seeking.
Yeah. So like, what are you going to do next? So hopefully she got the help that she needed and can be rehabilitated properly, given her young age, and can really get some serious therapy. Even just the reality of what she did probably is hard for her to deal with. Like, I can't even imagine, you know what I mean? So,
no, it's such a hard one. It
really, really is.
Because I've seen those texts, and the things that are in those texts, no sane person. That was not the conversation of a person with a healthy mind.
Oh God, no! And they
both
were talking about the devil that they saw, and that the devil wants them in hell.
Yeah.
And they both thought that they were destined for hell, and like would talk about the dark figure that they were seeing and what that meant. So, I mean, it's just they never should have met.
No.
Like they were just not good for each other in so many ways. But,
that's too bad.
It's a very, very sad story.
It is a very sad story.
Yeah. That's that. Sorry for. Yep.
Well, Suicide is a hard one. It's one that people struggle with, and it's a topic that isn't, like, circumstances like this, it's very hard to figure out. It's gray, right?
Yeah.
It has a very large gray area. So I think before we start to wrap up, we should really say, if you or someone you know is struggling, please make sure to seek help. Seek the appropriate help. You may not be the appropriate person for that.
Reach out
to the resources in your area.
Yeah, there's lots of them available, and especially right now with sort of people having to be isolated a lot more. These feelings are coming harder and stronger. Just do your best to reach out to someone, and I guarantee that they care, and they'll be there for you. So
yeah. All right. Well, now that we've put ourselves into a full-blown, like,
sadness,
I'm going to go home and crawl in my bed, and that'll be the end of my day, so.
Yeah, I know, that was very heavy.
Yes. I would like to apologize for depressing you all for 2 weeks.
Yes. Sorry. When I started this, it didn't hit me, and then it wasn't until today that because I kind of was disassociated from it a bit just to do the research and stuff. But now that I was reading through it, I was like, what have I done? And I was like, I don't have time to change.
Hey, you held that shit together for most of it.
I know. I cried a little bit. I'll probably cry again when we're done.
And so if anyone would like to take on the responsibility of trying to teach Sheena how to say Massachusetts, too, we're open for...
You know what it is?
Shits.
You know what it is? It's because when I was a kid, people said massive 2 shits. And that's all I can think in my head all the time. So I don't know how to say it properly.
Oh.
I'll learn, and I will come back, and I will woe you guys.
Yeah, it's one of those things as a kid. I don't know if you're going to wow anity with the ability to say...
Don't take my thunder.
Massachusetts.
Let me have it. It's the little things.
Yeah. So we've been talking about a couple different topics to do next. Like, I think we're working on 3 at this point that we've solidly... So cults.
Yes. Cults. We do want to do a serial killer episode, but maybe serial killers that aren't overdone. So we have
the ones that I know which one I want to do, and it's not overdone.
Yeah, so very, very crazy. Well, they all are. But
they all are.
So
can we put the serial killers, because I have about 3 to 4 weeks left of my courses.
Yeah.
Can we please put them after?
Definitely. Did you want to do the other uplifting topic of children who kill?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
What is our cutoff for age? At what point do we consider them not children
I think
anymore?
It should be like 12 and under.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Because otherwise it's adolescents who kill, and that's not the...
Yeah. There's also, like, siblings that kill, because that has happened.
Yes.
It's a smaller pool, but it's happened. I'm thinking in particular, at some point I would like to cover... I think were they Hernandez brothers?
Hernandez. I know. I saw them because they were also in the Crimes of Passion.
Oh my god.
But I know that's your thing, so like you should cover that one.
I really that story breaks my heart.
Yeah, it really does.
So yeah, I know a lot about that one because they did it. Did you ever watch the show? It was what was it called? American Crime. They did 2 seasons of it, and it was a different crime story for each one.
Oh.
But the second one, Edie Falco played their lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it was so good. So good. And the guys that they picked to play, it's like a docudrama, but it was very, very well done.
Kind of like...
they look just like them. Yeah. It wasn't that, though. I don't think that was the case they did in the first season. I can't remember what the first season was. I'll have to look it up. But it was a really, really good story, and I really like their story.
Yeah. You can definitely...
So I will cover the Hernandez brothers at some point. So serial killers when I'm done school, which is soon. Kids Who Kill is next.
Kids Who Kill is next.
Under 12. 12 and under.
12 and under. And then maybe we'll do the cults next. And then the serial killers.
Yeah.
Or we can find something else in between.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and we talked about this last time, but for anyone who's listening, Crystal and I are hoping to record our first... we don't have a name for it yet. So if you have anything quirky or clever, let us know.
Yeah.
But we're going to do Death Row cooking show.
The Death Row cooking show. There you go.
I just came up with it. There we go. And should we tell them who we're covering, or should we leave that a surprise?
Let's leave it a surprise in case we change our minds.
Oh, very, very true. Okay. But
we've also both decided that there is some things that Sheena also will not eat. So there might be a guest appearance from her son.
Yes. Which he's 13, so it's fine.
He's not allowed to listen to what we talk about. He can go back to his room.
He's just going to eat it. So basically, I have the serial killer cookbook, and it highlights their death row meal choices, and it gives us a recipe. So we are going to go through the recipe and cook it, possibly eat it, or just look at it, depending on our palate, and talk about the killer at hand. So
yeah,
it should be pretty cool. We have matching aprons, and it's a lot of fun. So wish us luck on our secondary endeavor that I don't know why we're doing it, because we're busy enough, but we're just going to keep at it.
But it's fun.
It is fun.
It's just that little extra thing.
Yeah.
And if we keep doing it, maybe it can be something we do as like a one-off here and there. Something else to mention is congratulations to our prize winner, Melissa, on the social media. If you don't follow us on Instagram, you don't follow us on Facebook, what's wrong with you? You should, because we are giving stuff away here and there, and our first winner was Melissa, and I am super excited to get her t-shirt to her, which is great.
Yes.
And the other thing to mention is, we've mentioned it before, but we do have Patreon. So if you would like to help us figure our shit out, by all means, check out our Patreon. There's different levels, and you get all kinds of goodies by joining. So
and you get exclusive opportunities, and you get to hang out with us a little bit closer, and we're kind of fucking cool. So maybe I just ruined it by saying that.
Well, we are kind of cool. I don't know if me and you could sit any closer, because it's still a pandemic.
I meant virtually closer.
Of course. All right, guys, we will talk to you again in a couple weeks, or next week.
Next week.
It feels like a couple weeks, but it's not. Next week. We'll talk to you next week. Sheena, don't die in the meantime.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.